Hi guys, my name is Joanna, and today I wanted to take some time to talk about and share my observations from the work that I've done with people related to the whole process of growth. I note a lot of the time that there is an assumption that growth is kind of this linear thing, meaning that we're in this position, we learn things, and we just move straight forward to this other desirable place. And growth, real long-term growth, doesn't typically work like that. It tends to be very non-linear. The way that I typically see it is I always imagine kind of this like old school phone cord, this coil, and if you were to stretch it out a little bit, it's kind of like this loop, right? It's like up and down and up and down. And each has its own little cycles, these own little loops. And each loop actually represents a different theme, like a different phase of learning, a different lesson to be had, let's say. And so typically when we are kind of bumping along through life, we all go through multiple phases of growth. There tends to be a time of where it's kind of calm and things seem to be progressing really well, and then all of a sudden it can feel like you just got like slammed up against a wall out of nowhere, and you're just getting really hit hard and challenged to kind of navigate life in a different way or figure things out. So generally when I have people that enter my office, they're in a kind of a heightened state in that they feel like things are really tense. They're usually really experiencing a lot of negative emotionality. Sometimes there can be a tendency to think that someone is broken or that there's something wrong with them because they feel so off and they feel so negative, instead of always just maybe honoring the fact that a lot of time the emotions that they're experiencing are actually signals of a mismatch, meaning that there's things happening that just aren't a match for them. It's not the things that are meant to be fulfilling for them, or they're really draining, and it can be hard to sometimes always identify that or what's contributing to how we're feeling. And that's why any sort of healing work, regardless if it's counseling or, Reiki, whatever, I'm always supportive of multiple avenues of healing to help people really kind of process what's going on with them, learn themselves, and really identify for self what they're really wanting. So while we're kind of, like I said, kind of plugging along, we can have really calm phases where things are really a great match and we're maybe really excited, really happy. And then we can enter phases where we start to get anxious, or it could even be signaled by just kind of a lower mood. Like we start to feel like we're depressed, sad, disconnected. And those are the starting points of when we're really getting challenged to grow. And growth is really uncomfortable. So usually in the heightened growth phase, when you're in the most intensive part, you are likely feeling the worst. So you're really, really being challenged on all levels, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, to really assess what's going on, to assess your path, and to really start to make some choices to bring back that vitality. There can be fear that that's not going to return, but generally, again, what I see negative emotions as are just simply a signal that something is not a match. I don't inherently believe that someone is broken or that they have some sort of disorder. I'm first inclined to really look at what's the situation, where are the events or the relationships that are really kind of creating this negative emotional impact on a person, and let's make some shifts there and see what happens. Most often when someone starts to kind of reconstruct life in a way that's meaningful to them and really serves their purpose and brings value and love and joy, the negative mood or the anxiety starts to dissipate. And sometimes too it's just a matter of learning skills on how to navigate kind of this whole cycle. Like this cycle is for everyone. Everyone goes through this. How they respond to it might differ. Some people might feel a lot of emotionality, and some people might have learned to kind of, as I call, surf the tide. So the goal is to just accept that this is the growth pattern, and to start to understand that it's temporary. So you might be in a phase that is really heightened and stressful, and just always knowing that you're going to come out the other end. And when you're on the other end, knowing that at some point in life you're probably going to enter another growth phase. Because growth is really uncomfortable, it can feel really bad for people, really negative, like something's wrong. And again, it's not always that something's wrong. It just might be something is a mismatch, and we're really being forced and encouraged and challenged is always the best word, I guess, to really assess what it is that we're wanting and needing. It's not a punishment. We're not victims. There's a lot of things that aren't always in our control, or it seems like we don't ask for, but sometimes where we focus our energy and our thoughts and our time have an impact. So there is some onus of us to start to really choose the things that are meaningful and that support our wellness and our higher being. And there's other things that just aren't within our control. And don't always seem to be fair, or are really hurtful, and we can get really angry and just kind of confused with these processes. But I like to talk about the process of growth as a process external to us, like it's a commonality that we all go through. So sometimes it's really nice to just know that this is kind of the cycle. It helps you sort of learn to reconstruct your narrative in your head about what's going on, knowing that, especially after a few cycles of it, that you're going to come out of it, even if you don't see the light of the tunnel. While you're in it, that there will be an end, there will be a conclusion. Once you gain the lesson from the experience, you will emerge, and it will be calm, and you'll have time to kind of settle and really incorporate the new information and the new awareness. And then perhaps just when you think you've got your breath back, you'll enter another one, or maybe you'll hit a pattern of time where you're kind of at peace for quite a while. But there is no end point in our growth. There is no state of final accomplishment. We're always evolving. We're always changing. We are not static. We're not meant to be static. So sometimes on forums, I see a lot of talk about being enlightened or awakened, which is more in regards to the spiritual realm. But there's no end state to us. We're just always moving along, always learning. There's always areas to expand, and what you think you might understand, you'll realize 10 years forward that you have a totally different awareness of it. So I can get a little frustrated sometimes when I see people kind of act like they're in this position of grandiosity, like they have it figured out, because none of us really do. We have an idea, and we have an interpretation, and we have a theory and a level of understanding in that moment, but the likelihood is that will shift with time and more experience. So if we can just honor not only our own experience, that we're all just kind of moving along at our own rates, and there's not one rate or progression that looks better than the other, and honoring those of others, that just because you or have an awareness of something they don't, doesn't make you inherently better, and in fact they might have a higher awareness on a different topic than you. And so we're just kind of all here learning and grooving and developing, and that we don't need to cross compare. It's actually I really encourage and invite people just to accept that your process is going to be different. How you write out these wave patterns are going to be different. The progression loops are for everyone, but what it looks like and the themes around it are different for everyone, and there's no need to compare. It's just, you can't compare. We're just so different, and our experiences and our themes and our learning challenges are so different that I find it to be kind of disrespectful and a disservice to try to compare, because they're all just inherently important. So my encouragement is a couple of things. One, accept and understand that life is not easy breezy. There are meant to be hiccups, bumps, challenges, roadblocks. Those are the phases of life where we actually grow the most. Growth is accompanied by really negative emotions, sometimes, just like I said, intense fear, anxiety, sadness, can feel like depression, can feel like you're losing everything, like everything's just kind of crumbling into dust. And generally what happens is we emerge out of these states in a much stronger place in our sense of self, and we have a greater awareness of what it is we're needing and wanting in life, perhaps even a better sense of purpose, and a stronger sense of direction that fits us best, which means that once we are on that path, we start to actually feel better. We inherently feel better. We don't have to focus on feeling better. If we focus on kind of lining things up in a way that facilitates our purpose and the values, the emotions sort of follow. So as I stated, and have stated in many videos, like I really don't see people as being the labels of mental health. I often see their symptoms or their sensations or their experiences as being symptomatic of something not necessarily being a match. And once they find the match, generally everything else lines up, meaning they start to feel like they're in a much happier space without necessarily taking medication or doing great things, although those can be helpful for some. My focus in my work is generally looking at kind of the things organically happening that's contributing and creating movement to see what kind of response, if any, happens. So if you are in a heightened state, if you're really feeling like things are shifting around you and you're feeling really lost, you are always encouraged to seek out any supports. If you don't have them kind of naturally in your life, feel free to seek them out professionally. Anyone that's in a healing capacity, and you resonate with is likely going to be the signal that that's a match and that's meant to be helpful for you. If you are in a phase of life where you're feeling that peace and you're just enjoying life, then take the moment to really practice mindfulness and extract the full beauty of those moments so that you kind of charge and refill your own bucket so that you're resourced when perhaps another growth phase enters, and you're going to need those moments to kind of get through sometimes these more challenging ones. And you'll notice again with the kind of the coil metaphor that there's sort of a balance overall, right? Like you kind of have these highs and lows, and you have these phases of intense growth and challenge, and you have these phases of kind of just calm waters where you're just sort of coasting and just sort of at peace. And overall it creates a balance in life, and you can really, by your own choices in those moments, kind of dictate the scenery around those times, like if that makes sense, as far as like the pattern of growth is going to happen, but you can ease the comfort while you're in the different phases, just with acceptance, understanding, surrender, and kind of working on the skills you need to sort of navigate those waves so that you're surfing them and you're not just sort of like, flipping and getting smashed and thrown out of the water, and just kind of stay afloat. And sometimes you're going to feel like you're white knuckling life, and that's okay. Like every time you make a choice in which the motivation is to make you feel better, you'll start to cultivate a greater awareness of what it is that you're really needing, and you'll start to really have a full understanding of how strong and lovely you are. So I hope that's helpful. Like I said, I just kind of want to normalize the growth patterns and just note that growth is really painful. It's cyclical. It's not a linear thing. What you think you understand, it might change after more years of experience. Just accept that we're always evolving, we're always changing, and that even if something is really dark right now and you feel really lost, that you can and will find your way to the light, and just to hold out and in the moment, when you're in these intensive phases, just to look for anything that brings you to a better space emotionally, whether it's what you've decide to focus your thoughts on or just by doing things that bring you joy and light. So I hope this was helpful, and I wish you the greatest of days. Bye.